Master Tavern Keeper's History of the Old World. Right then, I think that's all I can say about the hinterland of Koresh for the moment. Let us now return to Strolvar's tale. Oh, yeah, please, Master Tavern Keeper, I am all ears. Excellent. Well, if you recall, he and his mentor, Snorri Stonebreaker, had finally reached the Wolflands. Oh, so they had. But where are we now? Are these Wolflands still in the Darklands? Indeed they are. The Wolflands are due south of the Blasted Wastes, and directly to the north of the desolation of Asgore and the Plain of Bones, the final destination of the two dwarf slayers. Oh, yeah. And so, what do we know about this place, Master Tavern Keeper? Is this somewhere that has cropped up in your studies, perhaps? It is indeed known to me, though not through my studies. Rather via an old tale that I heard as a child by the fireside. Oh, tell us more. I love a good yarn. Ah, as well I know. Well, in that case, please listen on. Once upon a time, there was an ancient dwarf explorer called Megnet Farfoot, who, it is said, journeyed both far and wide in the old world and beyond. His tales are well known to every dwarf beardling in the dwarven mountain holds, but completely unknown outside of these enclaves. And so, how is it that you know of them then, Master Tavern Keeper? You are not the tallest, but you are certainly no dwarf. Ha ha ha! Not sure if I'm being complimented or insulted here, Heinrich. Perhaps I can just carry on, eh? Oh, yeah, but of course, Master Tavern Keeper. Anyway, the reason is down to my uncle's best friend, Hans Voigt. He had spent a great deal of time in Kalazakarak in his youth, and The Wanderings of Megnet Farfoot was actually one of the primary tomes he used to study both Kazalid, the tongue of the dwarves, and its written form, Klinkohun, more commonly called dwarf runes. When my uncle, Dieter von Torlikhelm, used to come visit us on his way back from one of his many missions, Hans would, well, more often than not, be with him. After a hearty dinner, the two would tell us old tales by the fireside, and one of my favourite protagonists of these was old Megnet Farfoot. I remember fondly the tale Hans told of the dwarf in the Wolflands. Karaberg, 1524.
Host, Saskia, thank you once again for the wonderful meal. It was both filling and delicious, as usual. But, young Septimus, you were asking for another tale from the wanderings of Megnet Farfoot, weren't you? Now, that's a nod and a half if I ever saw one. Well, in that case, come sit by the hearth and tell me, did I ever tell you the one where he travelled through the Wolflands? Oh no. Then I'll begin.
The Tale of Megnet Farfoot and Ald Amarak, the Lone Wolf.
East of the dwarf hold of Kalazakarak, at the end of the Silver Road, lie the Wolflands. This part of the Darklands are dominated by barren, wind-swept plains and lonely mountains, the most famous being Mount Silverspear in the north, now more commonly known as Mount Grimfang, after the hold was taken by the orcs around 3 millennia ago. But you've also got Crookback Mountain there in the west, apparently a lair of the Ratman, if you believe in such nonsense. And in the south is Mount Greyhag, an old hold held by the goblins. The Wolflands are a hard place, where only the hardest survive, and there is no place for the weak, and such things as compassion and mercy are all but non-existent. It was not always so. In the time before the great sundering of the elves, the Wolflands had been a more hospitable place, home to numerous tribes of goblins and large roaming packs of wolves. Apparently, the greenskins there had a good relationship with their canine compatriots, holding them in high regard, as well as rearing and employing them as mounts. Indeed, wolf veneration was rife in the culture of those particular goblins, and visible in the ornamentation that they used on their war gear, as well as the trinkets, fetishes and jewellery they adorned themselves with. But the sundering of Ulswan did happen, and both the World's Edge Mountains and the Darklands themselves were racked by devastating earthquakes. These caused numerous mountains to split open, and scalding lava to explode upwards and outwards, covering large swathes of the land in burning death lakes. The area we now call the Wolfland suffered particularly badly, and great portions of it were rendered uninhabitable. Most of the greenskins who survived left. Many added their blades to the numerous nearby goblin tribes during the Goblin Wars. Some went east, ending up as slaves of the Chaos Dwarves. Others went south and fell under the sway of a mysterious, immortal enchanter, whilst the remainder fled north and ended up as sacrifices in the fighting pits of the dark gods, of whom we do not speak, young Septimus. The wolves, on the other hand, stayed put. Competition for food and water became extreme and put an enormous amount of pressure on the population. They died in droves, the strong feeding on the weak until only the toughest, the most driven, ruthless, and the most relentless predators survived. It became a hard land, and this was the country that Megnet Farfoot found himself travelling through all those many years ago. It was a stormy night when Megnet entered the Wolflands. He could taste the coming rain on the air and sought out some sort of shelter before the downpour. He soon found it, but so had others. Beneath a wide stony arch he went, only to be confronted by a trio of goblin trappers. They sat beside a rickety wooden cart in front of which was yoked a mangy, toothless wolf. Upon spying Megnet, the three immediately drew themselves up to their feet and bared their weapons. One goblin bore a rusted, stabbing blade at the end of a long, gnarled stick. The second had a large net, whilst the third held up what looked like a collar with sharp spikes on the inside of it, attached to a greasy steel pole. Megnet drew his axe. A mere 3 goblins were no challenge at all. There was no exordium. There was no parley. The goblins carved their way through the fading twilight towards Megnet, and the dwarf did the same. He never made it, though. The goblin netter threw his net with practised skill before blade could clash against blade, and wholly caught Megnet within it, sending him tumbling over, caught up and bound within its coiled web. As Megnet struggled to free himself, the greenskin bearing the steel pole looped it through the various holes at the net's ingress, and the 2 goblins heaved the 2 ends of the pole up onto their shoulders, effectively trussing up Megnet like some sort of caught boar. He struggled and cursed, but to no avail, and he was about to resign himself to waiting it out and trying to escape later, when he saw the 3rd goblin readying to stick him with his spear. His struggling then became more fervent. It never reached him, though.
Out of nowhere, a gigantic white wolf, and I mean huge, at least twice the size of even the largest of wolves we have in the old world, pounced upon the goblin with the spear and bloodily ripped his head off his shoulders, splaying the other two greenskins red. They did not hang about, dropping Megnet and running for their lives. It didn't help them though. Both were pursued and their throats ripped out in less time than it takes to dance a halfling jig. Megnet, meanwhile, sliced at the net with his axe, cutting through the twined ropes until he was able to get himself free, just in time to greet the returning giant wolf, its snout red and bloody as goblin gore dripped from its jaws. The beast snarled, but it was not looking at Megnet as it did so. Instead, it was staring at the goblin's cart and the decrepit wolf that was harnessed to it. It was now that Megnet heard another sound, a mewling coming from the hooded boxes that were stacked up on the cart. The giant wolf looked at Megnet and then fixed its gaze back onto the cart once more. Megnet knew what to do. He moved to the cart and pulled off each of the fitted cloths. Under every single one was a small cage, and, stuffed into each, with barely enough room to breathe, yet alone move, was a wolf pup. The goblins must have been wolf trappers, taking the young of the wolflands to become mounts for the fierce goblin wolf riders of the Darklands. Megnet wasted not a moment and freed the young wolves, setting each one down onto the ground before cutting free the toothless wolf at the fore, who lay down onto her side. The pups immediately moved to her, and now Megnet could see that it was in fact a female, and not at all as old as he first thought. The pups began to suckle on her teats, although she was half starved and barely any milk came out. Upon seeing this, the giant wolf now moved to the group and regurgitated up a pile of goblin flesh onto the rocky ground, upon which they all began to immediately feed. The white wolf left them to it, and instead fixed its gaze on Megnet. The dwarf knew that, if he wished to live, he should leave, now. This was his reward, his life, and he duly disappeared off into the wet night. Many months later, he told the tale to an old dwarf prospector, and was surprised to hear that the wolf he had encountered was actually quite well known.
Sounds like you had a run-in with old Amarak, the lone wolf, the guardian spirit of the Wolflands. You're lucky to have lived. Most do not. I could not even say if he is a true wolf or not. He may well be some sort of elemental spirit, such is his size and intelligence. I've even heard rumours that it was the wolf worship of the ancient Grobby that brought him into existence. Sounds like poppycock to me though, but you be the judge of that. One thing I can say for certain though is this. He is the protector of the Wolflands and is uncompromising in his task. The Wolflands are no place for the weak, and such things as compassion and mercy are all but non-existent. That is, apart from old Amarak. He protects the weak and fells the strong. That said, I'll say it again. You are lucky to have lived.